Welcome to the X-Files, where today we delve into Shonen Jump's archive of cancelled manga to a time when the magazine attempted a mecha tokusatsu kind of series that a surprising amount of people wanted me to cover. I'm of course talking about Zipman. Full name, Zipman. Start date, December 2nd, 2019. End date, April 6, 2020. Total chapters, 17. Yusaku Shibata would begin their manga career by submitting the one-shot Armored to the 2009 Jump Newcomer Treasure Award, which Shibata would get a runner-up prize for, with it later being published in Akamaru Jump in the same year. Coinciding with this, Meiji Hyaki Hachutan Dengi would be a participant in 2009's Golden Future Cup, a competition within Weekly Shonen Jump which I've talked about a few times on the channel if you'd like to check out these videos about it. In simple terms though, it's a competition to help rookie mangaka get serialized within the magazine. Dengi would be a story based on the real-life inventor and all-around famous individual Hiraga Genai, with the manga using him as the basis for a battle shonen where his 108 inventions have been scattered around Japan. The main protagonist Denji then presumably goes around looking for them alongside Genai, who is now a dog some 100 years post his supposed death. Culturally, this is a bit beyond me, but it sounds super fun, and Shibata even did illustrations for both this and Armored in 2023, so we have a decent look at the characters and the general settings they're from. A few years later, we would get Enma Gavel in Shonen Jump's 9th issue of 2011, featuring Enma, the King of Hell, as he transfers to his school to fight his possessed classmates. There's elements of ecchi to this one which Zipman doesn't really have, but the same level of wordiness is inherent to both. This one is also translated into English if you'd like to read it, and I think it has some neat ideas which would have made for an interesting series. Next, in 2013, in a special issue of Shonen Jump entitled Jump Versus, many artists would publish one-shots that would get a series in Jump in the near future, like Tomohiro Yagi with Iron Knight, Yoichi Amano with Stealth Symphony, and our current subject Yusaku Shibata with Yokemono. Debuting in Jump's 34th issue of 2014, Yokemono would become a full series, seeing two boys intent on joining the Shinsengumi fight other warriors with animal-derived powers in alternate history medieval Japan. It would, however, only last for 16 chapters, being a quick cancellation just like Zipman would be. A year after this, in Jump Next's 4th volume of 2015, the one-shot Zippo would be published, being the basis for Zipman, but certain things are quite different. Firstly, the world is more intertwined with its Zip elements, and it also focuses primarily on a young boy joining a police squad. It honestly looks a bit more stable than what we ended up getting with Zipman, and I think the art and mecha designs look a lot better. A year after this, the short series Flower Samurai Sahara would debut alongside the very first issue of Jump Giga in 2016, with this series running for 4 total chapters. You can fully read this one as it's translated, and it's a neat little story about a samurai who aims to restore vegetation to a post-apocalyptic world devoid of any flowers. And before we get to the main event, Shibata would do a lot of assistant work on various series across his career, such as One Piece, My Eternal Enemy Inumaru Dash, Blue Exorcist, Omega Doki Zoo, which I made a previous X-File on, Bokoku no Siegfried, and My Hero Academia, with some of these artists having a big influence on how Shibata draws, as you may have noticed. Zipman would debut in Shonen Jump's issue 1 of 2020, seeing as protagonist Kaname Tatora, a high schooler and a meathead who loves nothing more than to obsess over his favorite tokusatsu hero Jackman, become the hero he's always dreamed of being. The beginning also establishes that Kaname's twin brother, Koshiro, has recently passed away and is someone who outshines Kaname in almost every aspect, being a genius to a comical extent at the tender age of 17. In reality though, he isn't fully dead, as Zipman's intro sees Kaname confronted with a giant mech which he can only defeat by wearing a specially powered suit which somehow houses his very own deceased brother's soul. Now together, the two embody a hero who looks just like Jackman and beat down the mecha with ease, but after the fact, Koshiro hesitates to reveal anything to his brother, telling him over and over to leave. He's a major asshole, to be honest, and at this point all we know is that someone else put Koshiro's consciousness in this suit, and that others using similar tech to Koshiro are popping up around the city causing mayhem. The brothers' bickering is put on hold though, as their childhood friend China is put at risk after a magical girl like Zipsuit attacks her and their school. The two realize they must join forces, as on their own they're ineffective, but together inside the suit they can kick ass and save the day. They soon find the easiest way to take out enemies is to unzip them, so they do so to the magical girl suit, finding that inside is a boy, to the brothers' surprise. This leads to one of the only moments of thematic depth in Zipman, where it briefly talks about the fiction and stories we engage with and how it's okay to like what you love, but you obviously shouldn't hurt others while engaging with it. A bit of a forced message, but something I did appreciate. We also get some info that the enemy organization is comprised of people who feel out of place with the world and want to instill a great change, even if that's through a destructive force like the suits. The brothers now have a few new goals in defeating this organization, finding the one who made the suits, and to return Koshiro back to his original body. They decide to work together from now on and rename themselves to Zipman. Before they know it, the antagonist group, the Zip Down Club, unzip their entire school, transforming it into the indestructible fortress Dragon Guard, taking dozens of students and teachers hostage in order to take part in their elaborate roleplay. They've also captured China, so once again she's the main motivation for our heroes to act, and they've even put her in princess clothes for good measure. You really can't get more cliched than that. To actually rescue her, Zipman must climb the floors of Dragon Guard and fight its hero bosses. The first being a pretty basic role, the second has a character strap bomb collars to students, but other than a hint of a moral dilemma, this battle is solved by Zipman just chasing down the main enemy and unzipping them. The third is then defeated as a joke, and we're onto the final boss of the arc, who manages to absorb Koshiro's soul, resulting in Kaname powering up in the Zipman suit alone, taking every attack the enemy throws at him and then walloping the enemy when he gets close enough. If that all sounds like it was rushed through, it's because the manga rushes through all of this as well. After this incident, the story jumps forward, letting us know that China is privy to all the details now. The main villain, the chairman, has also made themselves known and is offering others the power of the zip suits to be themselves. We get a montage where Zipman beats legally distinct Godzilla.
It's Godzilla! It looks like Godzilla, but due to international copyright laws, it's not.
A sumo wrestler and some cowboys, and it's then the villains make their final move. I'm not entirely sure what their final move is, but it somehow involves sending out massive ships into the air and capturing civilians. Zipman fights a Son Goku inspired zip suit, which might be some of the best parts of the manga, and then we reach the Steel X Tower where the final fight awaits. The chairman is crafty though and actually kept Koshiro's soul, brainwashing him and putting him in the suit of Weiss Zipman, resulting in a mirror match where the brothers actually get to fight on equal terms. But for extra evilness and edge factor, the chairman also commands Koshiro to kill the two's childhood friend China, so again she's put in the damsel in distress position. Kaname manages to grab Koshiro's zipper to snap him out of it, and we're treated to this same flashback we saw at the beginning. The two brothers' relationship is a really muddled one. Their rivalry stems from the competition to make China smile, and it's peppered with a lack of communication, with Koshiro being so self-centered and Kaname just being plain dense. I do like the sentiment at the end that both brothers realize they should have been better to each other and that they are both important to each other, but it's not very enjoyable to read, at least to me. As for why, Koshiro is genuinely insufferable and horrible, while Kaname gets a bit of a pass from me since it does feel like he is trying. I also don't like that Koshiro is supposed to be this mega genius who has made countless inventions to save others, even being regarded as a massive humanitarian, and yet he's so unbelievably petty and mean to his brother. If anything, he feels more like a villain or a rival character without the cool factor a rival character usually has. After snapping Koshiro out of his brainwashing, the two brothers, each in their own Zipman suits, then rush down the big bad in a couple of pages, and we get a short epilogue, not really explaining anything, but showing that both brothers now fight on the side of justice in their own ways. I think Zipman suffers from many issues. The initial plot is a bit overly convoluted, with the main character's brother dying immediately without us really knowing why this relationship is important, and by the end of the first chapter they're back and inside the zip suit. I also think no character is especially likable. Kaname is very loud on purpose, which I can see as being annoying to some, and Koshiro I think is meant to be unlikable with how abrasive he is and with how he pushes Kaname away. Anybody else isn't even really a character, so on the character front, Zipman really suffers. Its pacing is a core fumble as well, as even before it got cancelled, it was zipping all over the place. Some chapters are really slow, like the one where Kaname gets to know Magara Ito, someone we never see after that chapter, and in contrast, we then get an arc with 4 villains, which it rushes through in the span of 5 chapters, ending with Koshiro disappearing when we've still barely had any time to get to know him. The villains really don't help either. You'd hope they'd offer something interesting to the story, as the protagonists aren't really doing that, but no. They're all one-note villains who mainly just have minimal fighting gimmicks. The cutie fight early on is the best the villains get, which pushes Zipman's themes of individuality and accepting yourself. At least I think that's what it's going for. The idea that anyone can like a more magical girl feminine show is cool, and I think it's a good message, but alongside all this, it also presents the idea of fans or people in general taking their passions too far, evident with the whole Dragon Guard arc and how the villains treat it as their extensive roleplay, which puts others in danger. I'd also like to make it clear that from what we know, there are people in these suits, like the guy who likes cutie, as well as Kaname, and since this aspect isn't explored at all the suited villains come across as psychopaths really. The main reasoning for why they do what they do, I think, is just to be whoever they want to be, to presumably embrace their individuality and create a world where they might potentially be accepted. This idea is also something Kaname is doing by becoming Jackman or Zipman. He's also kind of role-playing and putting his passions first, even though he's not doing the exact same thing, as he's not harming anyone. He is still doing the same thing, essentially, though, as the villains. All of this said, if you couple this with the ending where Kaname seemingly stops becoming Zipman and joins the police force, the presumed message I get is one of societal rigidity. Like, of course you shouldn't go around as Godzilla killing people, but in depicting the villains the way it does, without much empathy, it comes across as if being true to yourself is a bad thing that needs to be quelled by a government institution like the police. You shouldn't express yourself, you shouldn't feel accepted because of who you are, you should instead be normal and be a part of this functioning society that everyone else is a part of. Thematically, Zipman is bankrupt. None of this makes sense, and if you try to make sense of it, I think the message you end up coming out of it with is a really horrible one, which I dislike. And for that reason, I don't think Zipman has anything to say, because I don't think this is the intended message, because it's far too bleak and just doesn't make sense, as it's passionately trying to grapple with media it clearly loves, like Tokusatsu and Mecha. There's also nothing heroic in beating down people you label as villains without trying to understand them because they don't fit society's standards of normalcy. It's all a massive mess. Since we're talking about the villains, I also find it quite funny that we see a silhouette of a baby enemy at one point who is never fought, and a massive baby being on the enemy's side is fitting since their motivations are no different from literal toddlers. On a more concrete front, Zipman would end in early 2020. This was a time in the magazine where manga that would usually get cancelled would get time to stretch their legs due to a slew of bigger manga ending. The rookies at the time, like Mashal and most notably Undead Unluck, would get some extra breathing room, but Zipman was a tad too early for this. I can imagine them potentially cancelling some other manga instead of Zipman. A Gravity Boys, Zipman's batchmate, would have been one, but I'm glad they didn't do that because unlike Zipman, A Gravity Boys is a bit of a hidden gem, which I also have an X-File on if you're interested in that. Mission Yozakura and Mitama Security are two other possibilities, but I don't really see why you'd get rid of them when Zipman was clearly less popular at the time. And for full disclosure, I think a hero series like this could do well in Jump. My Hero Academia kind of proves this. The Tokusatsu and mecha elements are subcultures that are very popular in Japan too, but I don't think Zipman executed either elements well, and its designs were somewhat lacking, leading to nobody really latching onto it. What does everyone else on the Discord think of Zipman though? This is one that's been requested by quite a few people, so I was interested in hearing any passionate responses. A big trend you'll see in responses this time is praise for the art and criticisms for mostly everything else, like in Dylan Bunn's comment, who stated they liked the art but understood why it had been cancelled due to the weak story and characters. TG similarly liked the artwork, which alongside some early mysteries like how Koshiro got trapped in the suit drew them in. But they then acknowledged the myriad of pacing issues it has, as well as the fact that we never really got to see anything the manga promised. We never get to know what the suits are, why the villains' motivations are the way they are, or who the villains' identities are. TG also brings up how Kaname's joke of being scary got old really fast, and they didn't like how much a damsel in distress Chino was. Her literally turning into a princess that needs to be saved says a lot about how overt and cliched the series can be. This wasn't an isolated complaint either, as I've mentioned it previously, and also another example is Witch Sarah, who has the same criticisms regarding how China's character is treated. They also bring up pacing as a big detractor of the series as well. And further on the pacing front, Arch has a neat little quote which I wanted to include, where they said that every chapter post the first volume feels like the series jumps 35 chapters into the future, making it hard to understand what's going on, and this is totally how it feels at points due to its warped pacing. Portalman mainly has critique on the brother characters, citing Kaname as like every other hyperactive shonen protagonist, but his brother overshadows him by being a massive dick. Koshiro is extremely unlikable throughout most of the manga, and it seems I'm not the only one who thinks so. Though Portalman does like how their arc as brothers actually ends, as it's one of the few things that does get a resolution in this manga. Jinwon found the art and designs amazing, but the rest of the manga bland to the point they didn't really care about any of the characters. Joni brings up that every problem that plagued Shibata's previous series Yokemono is present here, with only the art really improving. I honestly don't really remember Yokemono, so I appreciate the jump sleuthing and how this little review highlights which faults are similar between the two series. Like characters being introduced too quickly and then being removed without much establishment, leading to you not having any time to really form a connection, which was an issue both series suffered from apparently. I definitely think Zipman suffered from this because it introduces so many characters throughout its run, including core characters like Koshiro, and then takes them away from you. Major negatives Joni presented as well were the plot's pacing, again a huge issue where the word whiplash is being brought up to describe how jarring the plot unfolds throughout the story. Violent gives us a rare positive review, saying they really enjoyed all the fights, villains, and the character designs, relating them to a child's imaginary toy battle scenario. This short description is all I really need to understand why someone could like the series, since I think viewed under this lens it could be really enjoyable. Aspiring creator praises Zipman's art and the clear passion for what it's drawing from in Tokusatsu, but finds the actual story very limp, opting to quickly zip up. Opting to quickly zip up any interesting aspects or story beats. Again, there's a sense of apathy here, with aspiring creators saying they didn't find themselves caring for much, aside from liking a few art-based aspects. El Manu found Zipman meh, using the word multiple times, and for once doesn't really point to the artwork as a major positive, feeling it was derivative of Horikoshi and Oda's due to Shibata's experience working under them. Omazio found the series breeze past any interesting ideas or plot points, finding its fights unimpactful due to how quick they are and how weak the villains are on a character level. On a thematic level, they point towards the idea of how fiction can impact people, something that could be a really cool theme, but it's tackled in such a shallow way and is mostly forgotten about by the end. Speaking of how fiction can influence people, they also bring up the Tokusatsu inspiration on Shibata, stating that while the passion for it is clear, it doesn't really put much effort into engaging with those influences. It lacks the themes of struggle and sacrifice of something like Kamen Rider, opting to instead only draw from the most surface level parts for its inspiration. Kinky found Zipman sped through everything, bringing up a previous series we've covered, Red Sprite, as being 3 chapters shorter, but having a much more comprehensive and built-up story that was at least legible. They then go on to state that everything felt like random events just there to keep the story moving forward, and while there was an attempt to make an interesting character arc through the brothers' differences, it fell flat for them due to how two-dimensional the characters were. And finally, we have Juan M. Mendoza, who is a big fan of Zipman and Tokusatsu overall, with it being a force that inspired them to make a Tokusatsu manga one-shot of their own. Anything that inspires others to create is worth mentioning in my book, I think, and while the series did suffer from a myriad of problems, some people still did enjoy it, and I think if something was written more tightly and had the mecha or tokusatsu theming, a series like that could thrive in Jump, as people seem genuinely excited due to those influences. After Zipman would end, Shibata wouldn't waste any time in starting a new serial by the end of the year. Dragon Quest Dai no Daiboken Yusha Aven to Gakuen no Mao. This would be a spin-off of one of Shonen Jump's classic battle shonen manga from its golden age, Dragon Quest The Legend of Dai. It would be written by the original author Riku Sanjo and follows Dai's master Avan in a period of time before the original story. This spin-off is still ongoing in V-Jump, with quite a bit of it being translated into English, and I think Shibata really shines here as the artwork is fantastic. I especially like how he draws Dragon Quest's monsters, and I think his art serves as a really lovely modern interpretation of the original manga and game's designs. So despite falling short within Jump with his own series, I think this is a good conclusion for Shibata currently, with this Dragon Quest spin-off being largely praised. And that brings this X-File on Zipman to a close. What did you think of Zipman? Did you like it? Do you disagree with some of my or others' critiques? If you'd like to suggest and talk about other cancelled manga like this, feel free to join the X-Files Office's Discord, where plenty of people chat about this sort of manga all the time. Every month as well, we try to group up and vote for a new manga to cover like this too, so come aboard if that sounds like fun. Also, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It helps keep videos like this coming out, and you'll even get some cool bonus stuff like extra Patreon voted polls for these X-File videos, and I thank everyone as well who supports me in the credits of my videos, with you even getting your own unique little doodle at the $3 tier like the following cool people. Thank you, Kinocha, Jade, Kaizuku Gairu, Soroquel Zero, Harley the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Fako, Yellowtail, Lay Slogged, Chris P. Bacon, Cho Henshin, Full Metal, Unquestionable, Weeby Boy, Wurzel, Balant, Cactus, Joni, City Name E, Vino Burrito, Caffeine Dad, Cryonaut, and also AB, Vaco Draws, Otaku Gamer X, Deadpan, Shy Monkeys, Jonathan Dragonet, and John Sanford at the $1 tier. Thank you all so much for being patrons, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind and take care.